6 months after the first battle, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The great shipyards of Narration hummed with activity as human engineers worked alongside HFY biotechnicians to create something entirely new. Hybrid vessels that combined the durability of human military design with the living technology of the HFY. Captain Il-sung stood on the bridge of the Harmony Shield, the first ship of the new joint fleet. Around him, human and HFY crew members worked at stations that seemed to breathe with organic life. The ship itself was beautiful, in a way that purely human vessels never were, its hull flowing with bioluminescent patterns that indicated system status and crew health. "Captain," reported his HFY navigator Tiderunner, "long-range sensors are detecting massive hyperspace signatures. The Voidborn fleet is approaching." Il-sung felt his stomach tighten. Intelligence estimates had suggested thousands of bioships, but the reality was worse. The approaching fleet was so large it registered as a single massive object on their sensors. "How many?" he asked quietly. "Estimated 15,000 vessels, sir. And they're not just heading for Naraya. Multiple fleets are approaching Council, worlds throughout the sector." The plan had been obvious once intelligence confirmed the scope of the Voidborn response. The hive mind wasn't just coming back for revenge, it was launching a full-scale invasion of civilized space. Every major world in 3 spiral arms was under threat. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council chambers had been transformed into a military command center. Species that had spent centuries looking down on each other now worked desperately together, as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. "Solari Homeworld reports 1,500 bioships approaching," announced a Zephyrite communications officer. "Centauri Prime is under attack by 2,000 vessels. The Outer Rim colonies are already under siege." Counselor Yansu stood at the center of it all, coordinating the defense of worlds that had dismissed humanity as primitive just months before. The irony wasn't lost on her, but there was no time for satisfaction. "Admiral Kyung-min," she said, into her communicator, "what's the status of the joint fleet?" Kyung-min's voice came through clearly from the flagship Vengeance. "We have 200 hybrid vessels operational, plus 800 human warships and 50 HFY support ships. It's not enough to fight them everywhere, but it might be enough to save some worlds. Prioritize the Council core worlds. If Nexus Prime falls, organized resistance ends." "Understood. But Yansu, there's something you should know. We're not the only ones joining this fight." Through the great windows of the command center, new ships began appearing in orbit around Nexus Prime. Not human ships, not HFY vessels, but the elegant craft of species that had never fired a shot. In anger, Velthara approached Yeonsu with an expression the human had never seen on a Centauri face before: humility. "Counselor," she said formally, "the Centauri Defense Fleet requests permission to join the Human HFY Alliance." "Your ships aren't built for combat," Yeonsu replied. "No, but our crews are learning. Your Captain Jin Woo has been teaching our tactical officers. We may not be warriors, but we can follow orders and we can shoot straight." More voices joined in as other delegates approached. The Solari, the Zephyrite, even species Yeonsu had never spoken to before. They all said variations of the same thing. They wanted to help, they wanted to fight, they wanted to prove they deserved to survive. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" Velthara asked. "A galaxy that stands together instead of apart?" Yeonsu looked out at the growing fleet. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species all preparing to face an enemy that wanted to devour them all. "It's what the galaxy needed," she said. "I just hoped we wouldn't need a war to get it." The battle for Nexus Prime began 3 hours later. The Voidborn fleet emerged from hyperspace like a living wall of darkness, bioships stretching from one edge of the system to the other. The assembled Council fleet looked tiny in comparison, but something had changed since the last battle. The Council ships didn't scatter or retreat. Instead, they formed up in the formations that human tactical officers had taught them, supporting each other in ways they had never learned before. Captain Il-sung led the hybrid ships into the center of the battle, his vessel's living hull pulsing with healing energy that could repair damaged Allied ships, even in the middle of combat. Around him, HFY medical vessels worked frantically to keep the fleet operational, while human destroyers provided protective screens. "This is impossible," reported Lieutenant Chang Ho from his engineering station. "We're outnumbered 50-1, but we're holding the line." "It's not impossible," Il-sung replied, watching as a damaged Solari cruiser was restored to fighting condition by HFY biotechnology. "It's what happens when everyone fights for each other instead of just themselves." The battle raged for 6 hours. Ships died on both sides. But for every vessel the Allies lost, the Voidborn lost 10. The hive mind had expected to face the same scattered, uncoordinated resistance it had always encountered. Instead, it found itself fighting an enemy that had learned to think like a single organism. In the deepest part of the battle, Master Healer Koralesh worked frantically in her bioship's medical bay. Human wounded lay alongside Solari and Centauri casualties, all receiving the same desperate care. She had never imagined treating so many different species, but pain was universal and healing was her calling. "Healer," called one of her assistants, "the human captain requests permission to ram the Voidborn command ship." Koralesh looked at her patients, humans who had volunteered to die for her people, aliens who had learned to trust species they had never respected before. This was what the galaxy could become if they survived. "Tell the captain that ramming is unnecessary. We have a better idea." She activated her ship's biocommunication system, sending a message to every hybrid vessel in the fleet. "All medical ships, prepare for coordinated biopulse. We're going to show the Voidborn what real unity looks like." The 50 HFY vessels began to glow with healing energy, their bioluminescent hulls synchronizing into a single massive organism. The energy wave that erupted from them wasn't destructive, or it was the opposite. It was pure life force, the concentrated essence of a species that had spent millions of years learning to heal instead of harm. When the wave hit the Voidborn fleet, something unprecedented happened. The bioships, designed to consume and destroy, life began to convulse as their fundamental programming was overwritten. For the first time in their existence, Voidborn vessels began to heal instead of harvest. The hive mind screamed in frequencies that shattered windows on nearby space stations. Its perfect unity was corrupted by the alien concept of healing, of building instead of destroying, of preserving life instead of consuming it. The Voidborn fleet broke apart, individual bioships scattering in confusion as their collective consciousness collapsed into chaos. Some fled into hyperspace, others simply shut down, drifting helplessly as their crews struggled to understand what had happened to them. In the sudden quiet that followed, Captain Il-sung opened a channel to all Allied ships. "All vessels, report status." The responses came in dozens of languages from species that had never worked together before. Damage reports, casualty counts, but also something else. Expressions of gratitude, promises of friendship, offers of continued cooperation. "This is Admiral Kyung-min," came a transmission from the human flagship. "Nexus Prime is secure. Council worlds throughout the sector are reporting Voidborn retreats. It appears the hive mind collapse was system-wide." Hyunsu watched from the Council Command Center as rescue ships moved to aid damaged vessels. Human medics worked on Solari wounded, while Centauri engineers repaired HFY bioships. Species that had barely spoken to each other were now saving each other's lives. "Counselor," Velthara approached her with a datapad. "The preliminary casualty reports." Yonsu read the numbers with a heavy heart. Thousands dead, hundreds of ships destroyed, entire worlds scarred by the fighting. The price of victory was always paid in blood. "But look at this," Velthara continued, showing her another screen. "Cooperation agreements, trade partnerships, defense pacts. In 6 hours of fighting together, we formed more alliances than the Council managed in 6 centuries of talking." "It shouldn't have taken a war," Yonsu said sadly. "Perhaps. But now that we know what we can accomplish together, perhaps there won't need to be another one." 3 days later, the reformed Galactic Assembly met in emergency session. The old council structure had been dissolved, replaced by something that looked more like a military alliance than a diplomatic body. Every species had an equal voice, and every world had the right to call for help. Yun-Su addressed the assembly from the same podium where she had once been mocked and dismissed. "The Void-born threat is not ended," she said. "There are still hive fleets in deep space, still bioships that will come looking for revenge. But we've proven something important. When we stand together, when we fight for each other instead of ourselves, we're stronger than any enemy." She looked out at the assembled delegates, representatives of hundreds of worlds and dozens of species. The old galaxy was built on the idea that some species were more important than others. The new galaxy will be built on a different idea, that everyone deserves to be protected, everyone deserves. 3 days after the battle, Naraya's oceans still glowed with the light of human recovery ships. The debris from destroyed vessels, both human and void-born, drifted through the water like metal snow. In the deepest parts of the ocean, cleanup crews worked to remove the toxic remains before they could poison the delicate ecosystem. Dr. Sun-hee stood in the main hospital of Coral Mesh, watching something she had never thought possible. Human surgeons work side by side with Aquari healers, combining trauma surgery techniques with regenerative biotechnology. A human Marine who had lost his leg in the fighting was receiving treatment from both species simultaneously. "The tissue integration is remarkable," she told her Aquari counterpart, a healer named Reefsha whose skin shimmered with healing biolight. "Your regenerative matrix can regrow complex organs, but you've never dealt with combat trauma before." Reefsha's translator converted her musical speech into words. "Your surgical techniques preserve life when regeneration alone would fail. Together we can heal wounds neither species could treat alone." Sun-hee nodded, but her expression was troubled. The medical cooperation was going better than anyone had hoped, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The void-born retreat had been too easy, too quick. Her concerns were shared by Intelligence Officer Min-Soo, who stood in the temporary command center that had been set up in the city's central district. Holographic displays showed the positions of human ships throughout the system, but his attention was focused on long-range sensor data. "Admiral," he said to Kyung-min, "we're detecting movement in the outer rim. The void-born ships that escaped. They're not fleeing randomly." Kyung-min studied the tactical display. The surviving bioships were moving in a coordinated pattern, broadcasting on frequencies the humans couldn't decode. "They're calling for help," she realized. "That's what I'm afraid of, ma'am. Our xenobiology teams estimate there are at least 50 major void-born fleets in this galactic arm, if they all respond to the call." Kyung-min felt cold despite the warm water around the city. "How long do we have?" 6 months, maybe less. And ma'am, there's something else. The Galactic Council is demanding we withdraw from the system immediately." In the depths of Coral Mesh, Admiral Kyung-min met with Elder Neath in a chamber that had been designed for negotiations between species. The room was filled with both air and water, allowing both humans and Aquari to be comfortable. "Your people saved us," Neath said through her translation device. "We can never repay such a debt." "You don't owe us anything," Kyung-min replied. "But I need you to understand something. The Void-born will be back. When they come again, they'll bring everything they have." Neath's bioluminescent pattern shifted to colors that indicated deep sadness. "How many ships?" "Our intelligence estimates suggest thousands, maybe tens of thousands." The Aquari elder was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the sounds of the great city continued. The songs of children, the hum of biotechnology, the whispers of a people who had never known war until 3 days ago. "What would you have us do?" she finally asked. "We are healers, not warriors." "I'm not asking you to become warriors, but there are things your people can do that ours cannot. Your biotechnology, your understanding of living systems. We could use that knowledge to build better defenses. You want us to help you make weapons. I want us to help each other survive." Neath swam closer to the transparent barrier that separated them. "Admiral, what my people don't understand is why you came at all. Your species could have ignored our distress call like the Council did. You could have let us die and been safe. Why didn't you?" Kyung-min thought about Commander Hae-young, who had died saving a world full of strangers. She thought about the Marines still recovering in the hospital, young men and women who had volunteered to fight monsters in an alien ocean. She thought about her own daughter, safe on Earth, growing up in a galaxy where someone had to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Because that's not who we are, she said simply. Humans don't abandon people who need help, even when it's dangerous, even when it's stupid, even when no one asks us to. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was in emergency session. The chamber buzzed with angry voices as delegates demanded explanations from the human representative. "This is an outrage," shouted Velthera. "Humanity acted without authorization. They deployed military forces in violation of council law." Counselor Yonsu stood calmly at the speaker's podium, apparently unbothered by the chaos around her. "The Aquari are alive," she said. "That seems like a good outcome." "That's not the point." Kickstal's gas form shimmered with indignation. "You revealed classified military capabilities. You have been lying to this council for decades." "We've been preparing," Yonsu corrected. "While you were forming committees, we were building ships. While you were making speeches, we were training soldiers. While you were debating, we were getting ready for the day when someone would actually need defending." A Solari delegate stood, her feathers bristling with anger. "You cannot simply decide to ignore council authority whenever it suits you." "Council authority?" Yonsu laughed, and the sound carried clearly through the chamber. Where was council authority when the Voidborn were 3 days away from committing genocide? Where was your authority when an entire species was begging for help? The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. "You want to know what authority looks like?" Yonsu continued. "Authority is the willingness to act when action is needed. Authority is the strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Authority is earned through deed, not granted through committee vote." She activated her wrist display, showing new intelligence data to the chamber. "The Voidborn are regrouping. Our estimates suggest they'll return to the Kepler 442 system within 6 months with overwhelming force. When they do, they won't just target Naraya. They'll come for every world in this sector, including council member planets." Fear rippled through the assembled delegates. The Voidborn had never attacked council worlds directly before, but the humans' defeat of their fleet had changed the strategic balance. "What are you saying?" Velthara asked nervously. "I'm saying you have a choice. You can keep playing politics, while civilizations die, or you can accept that the galaxy has changed. The age of committee meetings and diplomatic protests is over. The age of standing up to monsters has begun." Back on Naraya, Colonel Nari walked through the recovered districts of Coral Mesh with Sergeant Wujin. The Aquari had begun decorating, the walls with bioluminescent murals depicting the battle, showing human and Aquari figures working together. "Look at that," Wujin said, pointing to one mural that showed a human marine protecting a group of Aquari children while healers tended to wounded humans. "They get it." "Get what?" "That we're stronger together than apart. Humans and Aquari. Warriors and healers. Maybe that's what the galaxy's been missing. Species that complete each other instead of competing." Nari nodded, but her expression was troubled. "We saved them this time. But next time we'll be ready," Wujin said confidently. "Them, us, and whoever else is smart enough to join us." In the command center, Admiral Kyung-min received a priority transmission from Earth. The message was brief but significant. "Additional fleets en route. Council requesting emergency military consultation. The galaxy is listening." She looked out through the transparent walls at the alien city around her, at the humans and Aquari working together to heal and rebuild. The price of peace, she realized, was eternal vigilance. But maybe with the right allies, that price was one they could afford to pay. The Voidborn would return. But when they did, they would find more than just humans waiting for them. They would find a galaxy that had finally learned the difference between civilization and strength. The real war was coming. But for the first time in galactic history, the monsters wouldn't be facing their prey alone. The first human missiles hit the Voidborn bioships like hammers striking rotten fruit. Explosions bloomed across the living hulls, tearing great wounds in flesh that had been designed to regenerate from almost any damage. But these weren't normal. Explosives. Admiral Kyung-min watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Quantum destabilizer warheads, first salvo successful. Void-borne regeneration systems are failing on 12 ships. The Void-borne had never faced weapons designed specifically to kill things that wouldn't stay dead. Human military scientists had spent decades studying samples from previous attacks, learning how the bioships healed themselves. Then they had built weapons to make sure that healing never happened. The hive mind screamed in frequencies that hurt to hear. For the first time in centuries, void-borne ships were actually dying instead of just being damaged. The swarm began to change formation, preparing to fight instead of simply consume. "Sir," reported Lieutenant So-jin from the stealth corvette Silent Death, "Void-borne are launching attack drones. Estimated 40,000 incoming. All ships, defensive pattern Gamma," Kyung-min ordered. "Show them what point defense looks like when you're not trying to be civilized." The space around the human fleet lit up with weapons fire. Laser grids, particle beams, and kinetic interceptors created a wall of destruction that the void-borne drones flew into and died. The aliens had expected to face weapons designed for exploration and trade, like the Council species used. Instead, they met guns built by a species that had learned warfare from predators and prey alike. But the real surprise was still coming. Captain Dong-hyun stood in the drop bay of his assault carrier, Fury's Edge, watching his sister Colonel Nari check her equipment one last time. Around them, 500 human Marines prepared for the most insane mission in military history. "You sure about this?" Dong-hyun asked. "We could just bombard them from orbit." Nari sealed her helmet and grinned at him through the transparent aluminum. "And let the Navy have all the fun?" "Not happening, brother." The plan was simple and completely crazy. While the fleet kept the bioships busy in space, human Marines would assault the Void-borne directly on the surface of Naraya. It had never been tried before because no species had ever been stupid enough to fight the Void-borne on the ground. Humans, apparently, were exactly that stupid. The drop pods launched like bullets from the carriers, penetrating Naraya's atmosphere in balls of fire. The Void-borne ground forces that had already landed looked up to see hundreds of metal capsules screaming down toward them. Colonel Nari's pod hit the ocean surface and immediately transformed, becoming a submersible that could handle the crushing depths of an alien world. Around her, her Marines did the same, their power armor adapting to the underwater environment. The Aquari had never seen anything like them. Sergeant Woo Jin kicked in the door of a shelter where a family cowered in terror, his massive suit dripping with seawater and bristling with weapons. "Ma'am," he said to the terrified Aquari mother, his helmet's translation system converting his words to their language. "We're here to help. Stay down and stay quiet." Before she could respond, he was gone, charging through the water toward a group of Void-borne harvesters that were drilling into the city's power core. The Void-borne drones had been built to capture and process defenseless civilians. They had never faced soldiers who had been trained from birth to kill things that wanted to kill them back. Woo Jin's first grenade didn't just destroy the harvester, it sent a quantum pulse through the water that disrupted every Void-borne drone within 50 meters. "This is Sergeant Woo Jin to all units," he reported as he switched to his assault rifle. "The locals have some kind of bioelectric field in their cities. It amplifies our quantum weapons. We can hurt these things if lot worse down here." Above them, the space battle raged on. Commander Hae Young piloted her destroyer Righteous Anger in a dangerous dance with a Void-borne mothership, her smaller vessel using speed and maneuverability to avoid the bioship's weapons. "Ma'am," her weapons officer reported, "we've lost main. Guns and our missile pods are empty." Hae Young looked at the massive bioship looming in front of them. Its hull was damaged but still functional, and it was moving toward Naraya to begin the harvest. If it reached the planet's surface, thousands of Aquari would die. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, safe in her school, learning about art and music instead of war. That little girl would grow up in a galaxy where innocent people could be protected from monsters, but only if someone was willing to pay the price. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's comm system. "Abandon ship. Emergency pods now." Her bridge crew stared at her in shock. "Ma'am, what are you doing?" "What needs to be done?" she said simply. "Get out. That's an order." When her crew was gone, Young sat alone on her bridge and aimed her ship at the bioship's central processor. The righteous anger accelerated to ramming speed. "Tell my daughter I kept my promise," she whispered just before impact. The explosion split the void-born mothership in half. Pieces of living ship tumbled through space, their biosystems failing without the central processor to coordinate them. The remaining smaller ships tried to scatter, but the human fleet was waiting for them. On Naraya's ocean floor, Colonel Nari led her marines through the ancient city of coral mesh. The Aquari had built their civilization in harmony with their world's natural beauty, creating structures that looked grown rather than constructed. Now those beautiful halls echoed with gunfire as humans fought to preserve them. "Colonel," reported one of her squad leaders, "we've secured the central district. Void-born ground forces are retreating to their landing ships." "Let them go," Nari ordered. "Our job isn't to chase them. It's to make sure they understand they're not welcome here." Through the transparent walls of the city, she could see Aquari families watching the humans with expressions of wonder and fear. They had never seen violence like this, had never imagined that anyone would fight so hard to protect strangers. Elder Nyath approached carefully, her bioluminescent skin flickering with colors that indicated uncertainty and gratitude. Nari removed her helmet, letting the Aquari see her face. "Why?" Nyath asked in broken standard. "Why do your people fight for us?" Nari looked through the walls at the Aquari children, no longer crying now that the monsters were gone. She thought about her brother in orbit, probably worrying about her safety. She thought about all the human families who would never see their loved ones again after this battle. "Because someone has to," she said simply. "Your people know how to heal. Ours know how to protect. Together, we can make something better than either of us could make alone." In orbit above them, Admiral Kyung Min counted the cost of victory. 68 ships destroyed or too damaged to fight. 3,000 humans dead, including Commander Young and dozens of other heroes whose names would be remembered, but the void-born fleet was broken. The survivors were fleeing toward deep space, their hive mind damaged and confused. They had never encountered prey that fought back with such systematic violence, such organized fury. "Ma'am," reported Sojin, "we're receiving a transmission from the fleeing bioships. Let me hear it." The Overmind's voice came through the speakers, no longer arrogant but filled with something that might have been fear. "What are you? We have harvested 1,000 worlds. No species has ever... How did you know how to hurt us?" Kyung-min activated her transmitter one last time. "We're humans," she said. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day, for 1,000,000 years. We learned to fight things bigger than us, stronger than us, and meaner than us. And we learned that the most important thing isn't being the strongest predator. It's being willing to protect the ones who can't protect themselves." The transmission cut off. The remaining void-born ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying word of their defeat to others of their kind. On the surface of Naraya, human medical teams worked alongside Aquari healers to treat the wounded. Dr. Sun-hee marveled at the aliens' regenerative technology, while teaching them human trauma surgery techniques. The galaxy's two most different species, one that had perfected peace and one that had mastered war, began to learn from each other. But, in the depths of space, other void-born fleets received the distress signal from the retreating ships. The hive mind was vast, and it had never suffered such a defeat. The lesson it learned was not humility, but rage. The real war was just beginning. The void-born harvester fleet moved through space like a disease. 200 bioships, each 1 kilometers long, their living hulls pulsing with dark energy. They had eaten their way across 3 star systems, leaving nothing behind but empty worlds stripped of all life. The hive mind that controlled them felt satisfaction as it calculated the approaching feast. The water world called Naraya held billions of aquatic creatures. Their bioenergy would feed the swarm for months. The native species, the Aquari, had already stopped sending their pathetic distress calls. They knew death was coming. Deep in Oi, the lead bioship, the Overmind processed tactical data. No military forces moved to defend the world. The galactic civilizations had abandoned the Aquari to their fate, just as they always did. The Voidborn had learned long ago that most spacefaring species were cowards who would sacrifice others to save themselves. The fleet would reach Naraya in 72 hours. After that, the harvest would begin. But something was wrong. Long-range sensors detected ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The signatures were unknown. Not Solari, not Centauri, not any of the species the Voidborn had encountered before. The Overmind focused its attention on the newcomers. 12 ships, small by Voidborn standards, crude-looking compared to the elegant vessels of the Council species. The hive mind dismissed them as scavengers, probably pirates hoping to loot whatever the Voidborn left behind. The bioships continued their approach to Naraya. Admiral Kyung-min stood on the bridge of her flagship, the battle cruiser Vengeance. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. These weren't green recruits. Every person on every ship in the fleet was a veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, the border wars the Council pretended didn't happen. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant So-jin from her position at the sensor station. "Voidborn fleet confirmed. 200 bioships, standard harvest formation. They're not changing course." "They don't see us as a threat," Kyung-min said with satisfaction. "Good. How are our friends doing?" So-jin smiled. "Cloaked fleet reports all systems green. 300 ships holding position, waiting for your signal." The real human fleet hung invisible in the darkness around Naraya, their advanced stealth systems making them appear as empty space to Voidborn sensors. Only 12 ships remained visible, bait for a trap decades in the making. Kyung-min opened a channel to all ships in the visible flotilla. "This is Admiral Kyung-min to all vessels. In a few hours, we're going to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten innocent people in front of Deathworlders. Remember your training, remember why we're here, and remember that failure means genocide." She switched to a wider frequency, one that reached the hidden fleet. "Ghost Squadron, this is actual. Begin final approach, weapons free in 60 minutes. Deep under Naraya's ocean, in the great city of Coral Mesh." Elder Nyath felt the weight of despair pressing down on her people. The last of the surface monitoring stations had gone dark. The bioships would soon begin their descent. Around her, thousands of Aquari families huddled together in the deepest shelters. Children who had never known fear now trembled in their parents' arms. The healing pools that were the pride of their civilization sat empty, their bioluminescent waters dimmed by grief. "Elder," whispered one of her advisors, "the surface scanners are detecting new ships." Nyath felt a flicker of hope quickly crushed by experience. "Council reinforcements?" "Unknown, Elder. The signatures are different." On the main display, 12 small ships took position between Naraya and the approaching swarm. They looked tiny compared to the bioships, like minnows facing sharks. 12 ships, Nyath said sadly. "Against 200, who are they?" Her tactical advisor checked the identification systems. "The ships are broadcasting human registry codes, Elder." Humans? Nyath had heard of them. The young species from the third spiral arm, barely members of galactic civilization. Why would they come here? Above them, in the cold vacuum of space, Admiral Kyung-min received a transmission on an open channel. The signal came from the Voidborn fleet. A harsh synthetic voice filled the bridge. "Unknown vessels, you are entering a harvesting zone. Withdraw immediately or be consumed." Kyung-min activated her own transmitter, broadcasting on all frequencies. She wanted the Aquari to hear this. "Voidborn fleet, this is Admiral Kyung-min of the Human Defense Force. You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately." Silence. Then laughter if the electronic screech that came back could be called laughter. "Humans, we have heard of your species. Barely evolved apes from a primitive world. You have 12 ships. We have 200. Withdraw or die." "Counteroffer," Kyungmin said calmly. "You leave now and some of you get to live." The laughter grew louder. "Your arrogance will be noted when we consume your biomatter. Kyungmin looked around her bridge. Every face showed the same expression. They were about to do something stupid and dangerous, and they couldn't wait to get started. All units drop cloak, execute Operation Deathworld. Space around Naraya suddenly filled with light as 300 human warships materialized from nothingness. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and battleships arranged in perfect attack formation. The visible 12 ships had been nothing but a distraction. The Voidborn fleet actually stopped moving. The hive mind struggled to process what it was seeing. 300 ships, heavily armed, military-grade weapons signatures unlike anything in their database. In the depths of Naraya, Elder Nayeth stared at her display screen in shock. The ocean around her city glowed with reflected light from the fleet above. "How many ships?" she whispered. 312, Elder. All human registry. All armed for war." For the first time in days, Nayeth smiled. The species her people had dismissed as primitive had brought more firepower to their defense than the entire Galactic Council could muster. Above them, Admiral Kyungmin opened one final channel. "Attention, Voidborn. I want you to understand something before this starts. You picked the wrong species to genocide. You see, we're not like the other civilizations you've encountered. We don't form committees when people are dying. We don't negotiate with monsters. And we really don't like bullies." The human fleet began to move, 300 ships converging on the Voidborn swarm with deadly precision. "We're humans," Kyungmin continued. "We're from a death world, and we're very good at what we do." The first missiles launched, streaking across the darkness toward the bioships. The real war was about to begin. In her deep ocean sanctuary, Nayeth watched the battle unfold above her world. For the first time since the crisis began, she allowed herself to hope. The monsters were coming to harvest her people, but bigger monsters had come to stop them. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was already in chaos when Counselor Yeon-su arrived. The massive chamber on Nexus Prime buzzed with the sounds of hundreds of different species arguing in dozens of languages. Translation matrices worked overtime to convert the noise into something that resembled order. Yeon-su walked to her seat in the back row, where humanity's single representative was allowed to sit. Around her, the important species occupied the prime spots near the center. The elegant Solari, with their bird-like features and superior attitudes. The crystalline Zephyrates who spoke in musical tones that sounded beautiful, but usually meant something cruel. The massive Centauri delegates who looked down on everyone, literally and figuratively. At the center of it all sat Council Prime Velthara, a Centauri whose blue skin gleamed under the chamber lights. She was calling for order, but not very hard. The chaos served her purposes. "The situation in the Kepler 442 system has been reviewed by our experts," Velthara announced when the noise finally died down. "The Voidborn incursion represents a threat to a non-member species. While this is unfortunate, our hands are tied by law." A Solari delegate stood, her feathers rustling with fake concern. "The Aquari chose not to join our council. They rejected our offer of membership 3 times. We cannot risk our fleets for beings who refused our protection." "Exactly right," agreed Kixtal of the Ethereal Collective, his gas form shimmering with approval. "The Aquari are pacifists by choice. If they will not defend themselves, why should we defend them?" Yeon-su stood up slowly. As the human representative, she rarely spoke during council sessions. Most of the other species barely remembered humans existed. "May I address the council?" she asked politely. Velthara looked annoyed. "The human delegate wishes to speak." "Very well, but please be brief. We have important matters to discuss." Yeon-su walked to the speaking platform at the center of the chamber. Around her, hundreds of alien eyes focused on her with barely hidden contempt. She was used to it. Humans were considered barely civilized by council standards. "Honored delegates," she began, "I have received word that the Aquari have 18 days before the Voidborn fleet reaches their world. What is the council's plan to help them?" Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not kind laughter, but the sort that made it clear the question itself was stupid. Velthara answered with mock patience. "As I just explained, the council will impose economic sanctions on the Voidborn. We will also send a formal diplomatic protest. These measures will show our displeasure with their actions. And how long will it take to organize this response? Our committees will need time to study the situation properly, perhaps 6 months to form a proper action plan. More laughter from the assembled delegates. Yeon-Soo nodded as if this made perfect sense. 6 months, she repeated, for a species that has 18 days to live. The laughter stopped. The chamber went quiet. The Aquari chose their path, Kixtal said defensively. They could have joined us. They could have built weapons. They chose to remain weak. I see, Yeon-Soo said. So the Council's position is that pacifist species deserve to die if they won't become warriors. That's not what we said, Velthera snapped. Don't put words in our mouths, human. Then what are you saying? That the Council will watch a genocide happen because you don't approve of the victims? The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Aliens who had been laughing moments before now looked uncomfortable. The Council has procedures, Velthera said stiffly. We cannot simply rush into military action every time there's a crisis. Military action, Yeon-Soo repeated. Interesting phrase. Tell me, how many void-born ships are approaching Naraya? A Zephyrite delegate consulted his datapad. Long-range scans show approximately 200 bioships. And how many council ships would it take to stop them? Uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. Everyone knew the answer. The Council had never successfully stopped a major void-born incursion. Their ships were designed for exploration and trade, not war. That's difficult to calculate, Velthera admitted. I'll help you calculate, Yeon-Soo said. Her voice was still polite, but something cold had entered it. The answer is that you can't stop them. Your fleets are beautiful, but they're not built for fighting. Your crews are intelligent, but they've never seen real combat. You're going to let the Aquari die because you can't save them, and you're too proud to admit it. The chamber erupted, in angry voices. Delegates shouted insults at the human who dared to speak truth to power. How dare you? Velthera's voice boomed over the chaos. Your species has been spacefaring for barely 3 centuries. What could you possibly know about warfare that we don't? Yeon-Soo smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Everything, she said quietly, but somehow her voice carried over the noise. She touched a control on her wrist device. Behind her, the chamber's main display screen lit up with classified documents, ship designs, fleet compositions, weapon specifications, battle records. The chamber went completely silent as the delegates stared at the screen. This is impossible, whispered a Solari representative. These designs, these capabilities, where did you get this information? We made it, Yeon-Soo said simply. Every ship, every weapon, every battle plan. Did you really think we spent the last 50 years building nothing but exploration vessels? Captain Jinwoo stepped out of the diplomatic entrance, his human fleet uniform clearly visible. His appearance caused another stir among the delegates. Counselor, Yeon-Soo, he said formally, I have a message from High Command. The 7th Expeditionary Fleet is requesting permission to respond to the Aquari distress call. How many ships? Yeon-Soo asked, though she already knew the answer. 300 vessels, fully armed and combat-ready. The chamber was so quiet you could hear the ventilation systems running. 300 ships? Velthara's voice was barely a whisper. That's impossible. Our records show humans have less than 200 ships total. Your records are wrong, Yeon-Soo said. Deliberately wrong. Did you think we would trust a council that calls us Deathworlders with our true military capabilities? She looked around the chamber, meeting alien eyes that now held fear instead of contempt. The Aquari sent a distress call. They asked for help from anyone who would listen. You laughed at them. You decided they deserved to die because they chose peace over war. But they made one mistake in their message. What mistake? Kixtal asked nervously. They asked for help from civilized species. They didn't ask for help from Deathworlders. Lucky for them, we were listening anyway. Yeon-Soo turned to Jinwoo. Tell Admiral Kyung-min that the Council has declined to act. Humanity will respond. Independently. Understood, Counselor. The fleet is already en route. As Jinwoo left, Yeon-Soo addressed the chamber one last time. You wanted to know what one primitive species could accomplish that your combined civilizations couldn't? In 18 days, you'll have your answer. And when the HFY are safe, when an entire species lives because someone cared enough to act, remember this moment. Remember that the Deathworlders you looked down on were the only ones civilized enough to help. She walked toward the exit as chaos erupted behind her. Delegates shouted questions and demands, but she didn't turn around. In the depths of space, human ships dropped out of hyperspace and began their approach to the Kepler 442 system. The galaxy was about to learn why, sometimes, it takes monsters to stop monsters. The Deep Space Communication Array on the Human Defense Fleet battlecruiser Iron Will picked up the signal at 0347 hours, Galactic Standard Time. It was weak, breaking up every few seconds, but the desperation in the alien voice was clear, even through the translation matrix. Please, anyone who can hear this, we are dying. Our world is being consumed. We cannot fight them. We only know peace. Please help us. Commander Taiho stood on the bridge, his dark eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the source of the transmission. The signal came from the Kepler 442 system, deep in unexplored space. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Boram, ran her fingers across the control panel, cleaning up the static. Sir, the signal is coming from a water world called Naraya. The species calls themselves the HFY. They're sending this message on every frequency they can reach. Taiho nodded slowly. He had heard stories about the HFY from the intelligence reports. They were fish-like beings who lived in underwater cities. They had developed amazing healing technology, but had never created a single weapon. The Galactic Council considered them too peaceful to be useful allies. What are they running from? Taiho asked. Boram's face went pale as she read the data. Sir, long-range sensors show massive bioships approaching their system. The signature matches Voidborn vessels. Every human on the bridge went silent. The Voidborn were living nightmares. They were a hive mind species that traveled from world to world, eating entire planets. They had destroyed dozens of civilizations over the past century. Worse yet, they were nearly impossible to kill because they could rebuild themselves from almost nothing. How long do the HFY have? Taiho asked quietly. Based on the Voidborn fleet speed, 18 days, sir. Maybe less. Taiho walked to the communication station. The HFY message was still playing on repeat. The voice belonged to someone young, probably barely an adult. Fear filled every word. We have sent messages to the Galactic Council. They say they will form a committee to study the problem. But we know the truth. By the time they decide to help, we will all be dead. We cannot fight. Our people have never learned how to hurt others. Please, if anyone is listening, if anyone cares about life more than politics, help us. The message ended and started again. Taiho had heard it 17 times now, and it still made his chest tight with anger. Sir, Boram said carefully, we should report this to High Command. The Council has strict rules about interfering with non-member species. The Council? Taiho said with a bitter laugh. The same Council that calls us Deathworlders and barely lets us have a voice in their meetings. Boram knew that tone. Her commander was thinking about doing something that would probably get them all in trouble. Sir, what are your orders? Taiho was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the HFY cities under their alien ocean, filled with beings who had never known war. He thought about the Voidborn ships, moving like a plague through space, leaving dead worlds behind them. Send a message to Admiral Kyung-min. Tell her we have a situation that requires immediate attention. Then contact Intelligence Officer Minsu. I want to know everything we have on the Kepler 442 system. Sir, are we really going to help them? Boram, my grandmother used to tell me stories about old Earth before we reached the stars. She said there was an old saying, evil wins when good people do nothing. The Galactic Council is going to do nothing. They'll have meetings and form committees while an entire species dies. He turned to face his crew. Every person on the bridge was looking at him. They were all humans, all members of the species the galaxy considered too violent and primitive to matter. But they understood something the Council didn't. I need volunteers, Taiho said. What I'm about to do might get us kicked out of the fleet. It might get us labeled as criminals. But there's a species out there that's about to be wiped out, and we might be the only ones who can stop it. Every hand on the bridge went up immediately. Thank you, Tejo said. He felt proud of his crew, but not surprised. This was what humans did. They helped people even when it was stupid, even when it was dangerous. Minsu's face appeared on the main screen. The intelligence officer looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. Commander, I got your message. What do you need? Everything you have on the Voidborn, everything you have on the Aquari, and everything you have on the Kepler 442 system. Minsu was quiet for a moment. Sir, that's classified information. Why do you need it? Because we're going to save them. Sir, the Council will never approve a rescue mission. And even if they did, we don't have enough ships to fight the Voidborn. Tejo smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Minsu, how many ships does the Galactic Council think humanity has? According to official records, about 200 vessels, mostly patrol boats and light cruisers. And how many ships do we actually have? Minsu's own smile was equally dark. That's a much larger number, sir. Then start making calls. It's time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can really do. As the Iron Will changed course toward the Kepler 442 system, the Aquari distress signal continued to broadcast across space. But now it wouldn't be going unanswered. The species that the galaxy had dismissed as too primitive was about to prove that sometimes primitive was exactly what the situation required. In the depths of space, other human ships were already moving. Ships that didn't appear on any official registry. Ships that had been built in secret shipyards armed with weapons the Council didn't know existed. Ships crewed by the descendants of a species that had clawed its way up from the bottom of a world's food chain by being very, very good at killing things that tried to kill them. The Aquari had sent an SOS asking for help. But what was coming wasn't just help. What was coming was war, brought by the one species in the galaxy that understood it better than anyone else. The message played one more time. Please help us. This time someone was listening who could actually do something about it.